All right, so it's 3 after, so let's go ahead and get things rolling. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us for this really exciting webinar. It's led by the creator of One Girl Wondering and Trova Trip host Lindsay Mukaddam. That's her, there she is. So Lindsay's hosted 13 trips, and I think counting, she has more on the books for next year. She's truly a pro, one of, the hosts with the highest reviews that we see come through. So really a great opportunity to learn from her. Lindsay, we can't wait to dive in and kind of learn how you made group travel a part of your brand.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me today to talk about making group travel part of your brand. If you see me looking down, that is because I'm reading through my notes. So pay attention on the screen, pay attention to my voice, but don't necessarily watch my face. So anyway, I am so excited that you are here. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Lindsay. I am a travel content creator and group trip host, and I go by the handle One Girl Wandering. I launched my first trip with Trova Trip back in 2021, and I ran it in 2022. Since then, I've now hosted 13 group trips. I just got back from South Africa, where I had 2 back-to-back trips with my community. I currently have 5 live trips and 2 more in the planning stages. To say that I've loved hosting these trips for my community would be an understatement. It's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done with my brand, and I truly want other people to have this experience with their communities as well. One aspect of hosting these trips that I'm particularly proud of is the number of return travelers that I have. On my South Africa one trip, I had 13 out of 18 repeat travelers, which I'm so grateful for being able to travel with members of my community multiple times. I'm also very proud of the number of first-time travelers that I have signed up with me. Quite a few people choose me to be their host, and this is their first time ever leaving the country or first time taking a big international trip by themselves. So today we are going to talk about how to integrate group travel into your brand, no matter your niche. We're going to cover my hosting journey and the things that have worked for my business and audience. We're going to talk about the benefits of group travel for your community. And we're also going to cover some of the tips and tricks to get started, to kind of just warm up your brain into thinking about how you can start to introduce group travel into your brand. First thing that you need to know about me and my journey is that I didn't want to be a host. I actually ignored and deleted the first few emails that I received from Trova Trip, partially because I was so trapped in the mindset that I was a solo travel content creator, that no one who was following me would actually want to travel with me. And I clearly was very wrong. And I almost missed out on a huge opportunity because I was trapped in that mindset. What I ended up discovering as I went through the Trova Trip survey process is that my community wasn't focused on solo travel, as in traveling alone. What they were more interested in is traveling without waiting on anyone else. I ended up having to completely rethink my niche, or at least what I thought my niche was, and what I thought my community wanted. And a lot of that had to do with thinking about the deeper message behind solo travel and how I was going to talk about group trips. Here are some of the talking points that I've developed and explored when relating group travel to my community of solo travelers or aspiring solo travelers. The first is that you can join a trip without waiting for anyone. This is huge for people who really want to travel, but maybe they don't want to do it completely on their own. Maybe they're also sick of waiting for people to look at their calendars, look at their schedule to accrue time off, and they're finally done postponing plans. They can join one of my group trips and they don't have to worry about all the emails that go back and forth, friends being flaky, missed or canceled plans, or those uncomfortable budget talks. None of that. The next piece of messaging is that group trips are great for destinations that might intimidate even an experienced solo traveler. There's a lot of places that people want to explore, but they might not feel comfortable doing it alone. A group trip is a great way to explore these places while having the safety net of a group, having the experience of a local guide, and having everything planned out for you. I'm also sure to tell my audience that they can spend a few days before or after doing some solo things on their own. While I wish that every itinerary and activity that every So while I wish every itinerary had every activity that every person wanted, that's just not possible. So reminding them that they can take extra time to explore these places deeper or hit up some things on their own that might not have been included in the itinerary is a huge light bulb moment for a lot of my travelers. In addition, they're going to get to feel more confident because maybe they've already been there for a week with me and with their local guide to answer questions. They'll feel more adjusted to the destination than if they were to arrive there on their own from the get-go. I'm also quick to point out that there is free time in all of the itineraries to do some solo exploring so that my independent travelers can feel like they can break off from the group or go do their own thing and not just feel like they have to be with the group at all times, socializing with everyone, doing what everyone else is doing. This is also a really great reminder for my more introverted travelers who may need to take some time to themselves to recharge after being in a social setting for an extended period of time. And finally, I get to remind them that they get to take this trip with the help of a professional. I prep all of my travelers for our trips in advance and make sure that they feel comfortable, that their questions are answered, and that they don't have a ton of anxiety or worry around a trip. I also let them know that they're going to have a local guide there to help every step of the way. This is huge, especially for my travelers that might be the planners of the group. I can't tell you how often I've had travelers say it was so nice to just sit back and enjoy as opposed to taking on their usual role of planner or mom of the group. And I'm able to give those travelers a chance to relax and enjoy their vacation because the local guide and myself take on that role for them. So as you can see, I have a really good idea of who the people are who are following me. I've got first-time travelers who are nervous about taking a big trip. I've got people who are tired of waiting on others to travel. I've also got experienced solo travelers who maybe want to tackle a tougher destination. I've got planners who are ready to take a break and are done with decision fatigue. And I've got messaging for all of those people on why group travel will solve the problems that they're having when they start thinking about the next trip they want to take. So how did I figure out this messaging and who I needed to target and with what? Well, a lot of it has to do with asking some simple questions about my community. Questions like, what problem does group travel solve? What benefits will they gain from going on a group trip? What will be the main takeaway from this entire experience? And here's the thing, you don't need to figure this out on your own. These are questions that you can ask your community. You can say to them, what are the benefits you're hoping to gain from this trip? What do you want to be the end result of this experience? What benefits do you see in going on a group trip? For my community, the benefits for them are gaining the confidence to travel internationally. So many of my travelers have gone on one of my trips and said it gave them the confidence to go on another one on their own. Another huge one is being part of a community of like-minded individuals. My travelers are consistently staying in contact after trips are over. They're making plans with one another. They're at each other's weddings. They are traveling together, or they're signing up for their next group trip with me together because they want to travel with one another. Another huge one is that they want the guidance from a professional traveler. They want the one-on-one experience of me helping them prep them for their trip. They want to know the steps that they should be taking, and they want to have someone to answer their questions. Another big one is having that stress-free planning of a trip. Quite a few of my travelers have very stressful professional jobs, and they just don't have the time to do their own research themselves. They know they want to go to a destination, but they don't even know what would be the first step in tackling the planning of a trip of that scale. So they come to me and Trova Trip and trust us with those details so that they can just sign up and go. So what are the benefits of group travel for creators and their communities? The biggest one is that it is really fun experience of taking your community beyond the phone screen. It is so cool to connect with people in real life. Taking the folks that you've met through engagement on your posts or in your direct messages and getting to meet them in real life and getting them to meet each other in real life. I love to be able to bring like-minded people together. I have so many awesome people who are in my community and who I know would get along. And this is one of the easiest ways I've found to connect them and help them form real relationships. I also get to show another side of myself when on these trips. I get to be myself. I get to be a little unfiltered in some ways, and I get to form real connections and community. You also get to share your knowledge and your passions in a much deeper way than just sharing it online. Especially for me, I love to take my travelers to destinations that I have already been to. I get to show them my favorite things about that destination or why a place really lights me up. And then I get to see that same love reflected back in their eyes. You also get to help people travel the world. This is huge. International travel and travel in general can be very intimidating. And you're able to extend a hand to people who may not have had the resources to plan something like this on their own. You give them something very tangible when you invite them on a group trip. And of course, finally, Trova Trip handles all the stress and details when it comes to planning these group trips, making it easy for you to focus on your people and not having to sweat all of the work that goes into researching local operators, activities, transportation, all that stuff. Group travel has totally changed my business. Honestly, it's brought me a lot more joy back into my life being online and this being my full-time business as a content creator. Promoting my trips has felt way more natural than any brand or affiliate partnership that I've ever had. These trips are something that I have a lot of passion about, and I know that my audience sees that in how I talk about these trips and my travelers who join me. It's helped me to stop feeling like I'm just a megaphone online, just screaming stuff into the void. I actually feel like I am someone who is connecting people and truly forming a community. It's been one thing to be able to give tips and tricks and helpful information about travel, but it's completely different now that I can extend a hand and offer something tangible that my travelers can do in order to travel more themselves without waiting on anyone else. I've also been able to truly make real friendships on these trips. There are people that I talk to regularly whose company I genuinely enjoy and who I'm very, very grateful to the fact that I've been able to travel with, and now we're part of each other's lives. I've also been able to help connect people to each other, and I've seen them go on to become real life friends, forge connections that go beyond the end of a trip. It is really cool to see my travelers meet up after a trip, whether it's going out to brunch, taking vacations together, reaching out to each other when they're in each other's cities. It's lovely to look at those friendships and say, I brought those people together. And I know it's going to sound super cheesy, but I truly get feedback from my travelers all the time that because of these group trips, their lives are changed for the better. And in turn, they've changed my life. So if that hasn't gotten you excited about hosting your own group trip with your community, I don't know what will. But let's talk about getting started, because I know that it can be challenging to figure out how to incorporate group travel into your brand, especially if you don't feel like your niche isn't directly related to travel. My first recommendation is that you identify some of the core aspects of your online presence. Some of these things might not have to do anything with your main niche or what you're known for online. These things could be hobbies or passions. Maybe it's something that you share about your personal life that's really resonated with your audience. Maybe it's parts of your niche that could be potentially replicated around the world. So here are some examples of things that you might be able to pull from and how they would relate to a destination or activities when you go about planning your group trip. And some of these are things that I've seen other hosts do themselves. So maybe your audience knows that you are a huge fan of Harry Potter. You could look at a destination that really taps into that, like Scotland or London. Maybe you're known for being out hiking, or you're super outdoorsy, you're on the trails every weekend, and your community is always asking for your outdoor recs. There are a ton of itineraries that feature hiking or camping. Perhaps your audience knows that you've got a passion for food and wine and cooking. There are so many great destinations where you'd be able to share that love with them. Health and wellness might be your thing. Maybe you're reminding your audience on a regular basis that they need to take time for themselves. Take time to relax and reflect and do inner work. There's a lot of great destinations that are focused on wellness and slowing down, and you can really help them tap into that self-care. Maybe you're known for being your colorful feed, that all of your videos are bright, your wardrobe is rainbow. There are destinations around the world that would totally match that vibe. Or maybe you are known because you have the best shopping habits and best hauls. There are so many destinations where you could take your audience shopping with you, like Paris. That would be great. Do some designer shopping. So one of the ways to find out what your audience is looking forward to and where they want to travel with you when they picture you guys traveling together is by using the Trova Trip survey. When you first sign up with Trova Trip, you are given access to a very powerful tool, which is the Trova Trip survey. And this is how you're going to get started on collecting information on your audience. Now, I know that when you guys signed up, there was a lot of questions about how to get responses on your survey. So my first tip is to spread that link everywhere and talk about it a lot. If you're on multiple platforms, if you have an email list, like post that link everywhere. Remember that not everyone is on social media the way we're on social media as content creators. We all know that everyone who's following us doesn't see every bit of content that we put out. Thank you, algorithm. So if you post your link every day for an entire week, not everyone is going to see it every time you post it. And chances are you won't even hit your entire audience. So don't feel like you are over posting or oversharing too much. Some things that I think are great to remind your audience when you're talking about your survey link is that it doesn't mean that they are committing to traveling with you. It's just a way for you to get information and find out where they want to travel with you. So you can let them know that there's no like hard and fast commitment. They aren't signing up for the group trip right then and there. Do let them know, though, if they are filling out the survey, that they will receive an email when your trip launches, and they'll be one of the first people to get dibs on it. And definitely remind them that it only takes a few minutes to fill out the survey. It's not a huge time commitment on their part. And emphasize to them that you are wanting them to fill this out because you truly care about their opinion on where they want to travel to with you. Still need more help? Continue to ask your audience. It has been years since I launched my initial Trova Trip survey, and I still poll my audience regularly about destinations they're interested in when I'm thinking about planning my next trip. I'm also asking them about activities that they want to do, what their budget is, and when they want to travel. And I'm also doing this with my repeat travelers as well, because I already know that they're great, wonderful travelers who've traveled with me in the past, and I want their buy-in. I want to know what they're thinking about. So I'll also ask my audience what's holding them back from signing up on a trip. And here's a big one. I am not afraid to DM people and have a follow-up conversation. I want to know more information, because the more information I have, the more I'm able to like make a good decision and pick a trip that works best for them. One, I want them to know, make them feel like they are truly helping me plan these trips, and that I want their buy-in and that I care about their opinion, because I do. I'm creating a product for them, not for myself. And two, I also want to address anything that's holding them back from joining me and tackle those issues directly. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people who are anxious or worried about signing up for a trip. And I've been able to talk to them directly as their friend and really kind of help them understand the process. And a lot of them have gone on to sign up with me because I've helped get rid of some of those fears, anxieties, and answer those questions. And if I hadn't reached out, then those questions would have gone completely unanswered. And I might have lost out on having that wonderful person on my trip. So I also use polls on my stories to help narrow down destinations that were pretty much tied on my Trova Trip survey. Like when I first started out, 2 destinations that were neck and neck were Costa Rica and Greece. And both were at very different price points. So I asked my audience outright, like, knowing how much Costa Rica is going to cost versus Greece, now what's your choice? And overwhelmingly, they went with Costa Rica. Had I gone with the top choice on my Trova Trip survey, which was Greece, then my first trip might not have sold out, but I was willing to dig deeper into that data and ask for their opinion. So yeah. Oh, wait. Here we go. Sorry. So I've got a few questions on this slide that you can ask your audience, but one that I really want to point out is why do you enjoy following my account? Because I think that once you ask your audience that, you might get some surprising answers. And I think that's just a really great question to ask in general. So there's a couple questions there. You can copy them down, but that middle one I think is a huge one because you'd be surprised at why people enjoy following you. But anyway, what the goal here is to pick a destination and activities that are aligned with your brand and who you are and things that your audience knows and likes about you, and support why they follow your account, because that's going to help you confirm and sell out that trip. Okay. Now, beyond the destination activities that are included in itineraries that you're going to see in your host portal, there are other ways to incorporate your brand into a trip. So first off, your first step, of course, is choosing your destination, which you're going to pick with the help of your community and all the information that you've gathered. You're going to make sure that the activities are things that everyone's going to enjoy, and they're also things that you're passionate about or you think you'll enjoy. Now, the third is adjusting where needed, and one of my favorite ways to do that are formal and informal gatherings. So let's talk about formal gatherings. This is an opportunity for you to share your knowledge. Many hosts use this as a time to teach a class or a workshop. These are things that are happening in a more formal setting that requires a space reservation. These could be fitness classes, they could be writing workshops, photography class, a seminar on a topic that you're an expert in and you're leading the discussion. Now, the difference between a formal and informal gathering, which we'll get to in a minute, has to do with the space that it'll be taking place in. If you need to rent a conference room, a studio, or equipment, or add an additional transportation to a particular place, these would be things that you would work on when you're in the trip planning process to then add into the cost of your trip. Okay. Now, an informal gathering is one of my favorites because you get to be really creative here. So let me tell you about an informal gathering that I'm leading on one of my trips and 3 others that I've seen other hosts incorporate into their trips. So for my Paris trip this summer, I invited all of my travelers who are going on the trip to the masked ball in Versailles. If you haven't heard of it, it is so cool. It's basically a rave that lasts all night and everyone comes dressed in Baroque costumes and masks. So I coordinated my trip dates around when the ball would be happening. And I let my travelers know that's why I picked these dates. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to add this to my sales page because when my trip launched, they hadn't announced the dates to the ball. But I have a Slack community where I keep track of all my travelers, and we've been talking since the trip confirmed. And they all knew that when I was selling the trip, that was the goal, was to have it around the time of this ball. Once the dates were announced, I got everyone together. I took down everyone's information, and we all agreed on the tickets that we wanted to get. And I have been coordinating this extra adventure for all of us to have. And what's really cool is that every single person who signed up for my trip currently has decided that they want to go to the ball. Now, I will say that this example is a lot of work, but there are also other informal gatherings that don't take as much coordination on your part. So another example is my friend Laura. Her niche is all about thrifting and vintage. So she schedules time to take her travelers to go thrifting and vintage shopping at markets that she knows of. And that's what she's doing for all of her upcoming trips. And that's what her community knows her for and is super excited to do with her. So my friend Emma, she just launched her trip to London, and she's got quite a few informal gatherings that she's planning on doing with her itinerary. But one really cool one is that she's going to be organizing tickets to go see a show on the West End one night for everyone who wants to go. She's also doing a really cool stuff like a pub crawl and like a picnic in Kensington Gardens. I'm actually signed up for her trip, and I'm very excited about all of this. So while Emma's niche is actually her social media engagement business, Right Hand Glam, her audience knows she loves London, is an expert on the city. So also, yes, I do sign up for Trova trips as a traveler. And I've also had other hosts sign up for my trips as well. I certainly would not be promoting something that I wouldn't also spend my money on. So I love being a traveler on group trips myself. Okay, getting to Caitlin. She's got 2 trips for Japan lined up for the fall, and she's offering an evening photography walk, She's really, really well known for her photography. And she's also coordinating a make your own kimono bag class for everyone that wants to join that activity. Caitlin's niche revolves around her living in Japan. So this is a perfect way for her to add a personal touch to her itinerary. All these sound like so much fun. So while informal gatherings don't have an aspect that needs to be taken into account when pricing out your trip, such as studio space or equipment rental, I do think that you should be considering what you're offering, the coordination time, and your time while you're on the trip and when you're pricing your trip, because this is a huge value add and you are doing a lot of work to make these things happen. So yes, formal and informal gatherings require a bit more work on your part as a host, but they are a great way to make your itinerary stand out amongst a sea of other itineraries and hosts. And it's a perfect way for you to share your passion, your hobbies, your expertise, as well as integrating your brand into your trip. I'm sure you guys have already got some awesome creative ideas. Okay, finally, let's talk about some pre-trip ideas where you can integrate your brand. I think it's so valuable to be talking to your travelers as soon as your trip confirms for a variety of reasons. One of which is that you're about to travel to a foreign country with these people. Getting to know them in advance of that is going to make everyone feel so much more comfortable. You're also going to be able to answer any questions that they have, make them feel supported, which really helps retain travelers and prevent them from dropping off. It also gives them a place to get excited and share about the trip and get to meet one another prior to going on it. And the more excitement that's built up around it, the more likely they are to follow through, make their final payment, and go on the trip. So here are some fun ways that you can get that pre-trip excitement going and introduce your brand. For me, I created a space for my travelers in Slack, but you could utilize a Facebook group or a WhatsApp to communicate. That way, everyone has a place that's dedicated to talking about the trip and communicating with you and one another. You can host Zoom calls so that people get to meet face-to-face-ish. I also like to create documents to help my travelers get ready for trips. I am known for being a type A planner. Providing them with my own research helps really play into that aspect of my personal brand. In the past, I've created packing lists that go a little bit beyond what Trova Trip has on their website. I've created custom maps with ideas of how to spend free time. I've given personalized recommendations on things that are off itinerary, especially when I know that a lot of my travelers will be extending their trips and we're looking for planning ideas. But you could do things like maybe teach a class over Zoom, photography or cooking or anything related to about you and your destination. I've taught classes about how to book flights and convert currency. You could start a little book club and read a book about the destination or some of the activities that you're going to do. And if you're not into reading, maybe y'all can watch a movie and come together and discuss that. You can also work on things like coordinating outfits. I did this on my trip to Italy. I've also seen other creators create a dance that everyone learns and they do when they get together. You can ask them to submit song suggestions and make the perfect vacation playlist so that everyone can listen to that while they're getting excited for the venture you're about to have. There are a ton of fun things that I'm sure you can think of beyond this list that'll help create a unique and inspiring experience for your travelers leading up to the trip. Okay, wow, we just went through a ton of information about how to make group travel part of your brand. And so now let's go ahead and open it up to some questions.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Lindsay. Amazing information. I was keeping an eye on the chat throughout, and attendees were just finding your tips so helpful.
Oh,
so
good.
Yeah, right off the bat, awesome. But we did get some really good questions coming in, so let's just go ahead and dive in.
Okay.
Okay, so first question is, I would love to hold a retreat for women, but my schedule is packed. What's it like booking a trip with Trova? Was it fairly easy or time consuming? Is there a lot of follow through with details that'll be on my end, or did they help to take care of that?
Trova Trip definitely takes a lot of the hard work out of planning, especially like once you have access to your host portal, you'll get access to all the itineraries. So you can see everything that's going on a trip. And you get to select that. And then from there, you can add in, like I said, those formal or informal gatherings. If that's just something that's not accessible to you because of your schedule, like you don't have to worry about that. And so then once your trip launches, you really don't have a ton of communication that you have to do with Trova Trip until about 50 days prior to your trip, which is when you get in touch with your trip coordinator. And they're the ones who are helping hammer out just those last minute details, fill out times and details into the itinerary. So that's when I'd say like you really actually start having quite a few emails go back and forth. It's also when your traveler is going to be asking questions anyway. So you'll be having all of that information go through your trip coordinator.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question, which platform was most fruitful for you to get engagement and survey responses? How did you grow your following?
So for me, while on my TikTok, I have like over 126,000 followers. My Instagram has about 28, almost 29,000. But Instagram is like where my people are. That's where like my core audience is. So that's where people who are really know, like, and trust me. So for me, it was Instagram. That's where I feel like my people are just more active and where they're more involved in like my life, even though I do have a larger following over on TikTok. So I would say it's not necessarily about having a significant amount of people in your community, but having like the people who are really involved and really commenting on your stuff and your messaging back and forth, stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. One trend that we've seen at Trova too is we find that our hosts who have like a really strong community on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, tend to have folks that are really engaged and want to travel with them. And then TikTok tends to be a little bit less so. If you think about like the TikTok experience, people are just kind of scrolling through. It's not even seeing content from folks they follow. So it's not all the time, but just kind of something that we do tend to notice.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Cool. Next question. Ooh, this is a good one. Are you ever worried that it will be tiring trying to be on all the time during the trip and that people might be disappointed by meeting the real you?
Of course, I've got social anxiety. But I really love what I do and I really see like the importance behind it and like how much my community also loves it. So like that's one of the big things that kind of like gets me through. I'm also sure to like take time in the evenings, and I've gotten way better about this the more that I've hosted, about being like, all right, I'm going to bed, guys. Like, you have fun. And I know that like I need the rest so that I can show up like the next day with like my cup full for them and like be the host that they need to have the next day. But yeah, it's definitely something that you have to like take into consideration when you are becoming a host, is what that's going to be like, because it is like you're hosting a dinner party. It's just a dinner party that is lasting for multiple days.
Totally. And also like going back to, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and making sure that you're good before you can take care of anyone else. Personally, good advice for trips and life in general. I'm an advocate for that. But yeah, just take that time and recharge your social battery as you need.
And I will tell you that none of my travelers ever are like, oh my God, I can't believe that you like want sleep or anything like that. In fact, I even have one of my repeat travelers being like, I'm so proud of you for going to bed early because I know you normally don't do that. And I was like, oh, thank you. I am taking care of myself.
I love that. And we love the positive affirmation. That's awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Alrighty, next question. How do you tell your audience that you might be earning income through traveling with them? I just don't want them to feel like they are being used in any way.
I think it really comes down to the way that you talk about your trips and just who you are on the trips. Like, my community is rooting for my success. They want me to have a successful business. They watched me go from being laid off in 2020 from my dream job in theater to now this is my full-time job. And they're excited for me to be successful. And they're excited for me to like have this income stream that also is able to provide something to them as well. And like I said in my talk, I feel way more authentic about these group trips and selling them than I have with pretty much any other brand partnership. Like, yes, I love products and I love sharing things that I like with my audience, but like this has felt so much more aligned and just like so much more honest than like working with a brand for me.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, next questions. Folks look like they're having some questions around promoting trips. So what specific actions did you find connected to bookings? DMs, posts, stickers on stories, etc.
So a lot of it was, like I said, asking the question, like, what's holding you back, so that I could address that directly with some people. who've now gone on to, I can think of just a few of my travelers who I had those conversations with them and being like, you say you want to join, like what are you being hesitant about? Like, can I help you in any way? Can I answer any questions? And now they're repeat travelers. I can think of just a few of them who've been on 3 trips with me. And a lot of it had to do with anxiety. But for me, it's really just like getting down in my DMs and like having conversations with people. Because the itinerary and the trips are great, but they also want to know like who they're traveling with and who I am as a person. And so when I reach out to them and we are having a conversation like normal human beings, I really feel like that kind of breaks down that barrier. And a lot of my travelers have just needed for me to be in their DMs and being like, I would love to have you on this trip. And they go, okay, great. I got like a personalized invitation. And it's because I do want them to be on that trip.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's one thing that like, I know that you do so well is just making the individual members of your community feel so cared for through that one-to-one communication. It goes such a long way. And then when you actually travel with them in real life, they like already feel like they know you even more. And it's just super cool. How do you structure your Slack channel for travelers? Is there a separate channel for each trip, or can travelers from separate trips connect there as well?
So what I have is just like my general workspace, which everyone is in. And that's honestly one of my great communication tools when, because I've got over 200 people right now in my group trip Slack, because 13 trips. I've got a lot of travelers. And I'll use that channel to like make announcements or ask questions about upcoming trips. Like I was just asking about plans for a 2025 trip. And I was saying like, hey, these are like the 2 months that we could go. What do you guys feel like? And then each channel, each trip has its own channel as well, so that people are able to connect within there, but they are open for anyone. Cause I tell people like, if you're in my community and you're thinking about going on a trip, like drop into the channel and see what we're chatting about, see who's going. Cause a lot of times I'm like, oh my gosh, so-and-so's going. I went on a trip with her to this destination. I want to travel with her again. I'm like, okay, great. Like, let's go. Let's have fun. So that's how I structure my Slack. But it is only open to people who have signed up for my trips. I don't kick anybody out, even if they have to cancel a trip with me. They're still in the community. They still have access to it. And yeah, it's just been really, really great for me. And I do have the free version of Slack. So unfortunately, my chats are deleted after 90 days, which kind of sucks. But the paid version with the number of travelers that I have would be like, I don't know, it would be like $1,500 a month. And I'm just not there yet, guys. So I do use the free version.
Totally understandable. I feel like 1,500 a month is just excessive. Slack, what are you doing? Come on.
And I only want for message archives. I don't want any other features. I just want that. So yeah, I tried to talk to them about it and they're like, no, sorry. And I was like, oh, darn.
Sneakers. Okay, so it says, I am new to this. How do you go about pricing your trips? Does Trova Trip price it for you, or do you create the trip price?
Okay, so it's kind of a combo of the two. So when you submit your trip request, it goes out to the local operator, and the local operator then comes back with a price. So they're the ones who are looking at like what the hotels cost during that time, what the activities cost, transportation. They put it all into a nice package. And then when you get into your host portal, you'll see that there is Trova Trips suggested early bird price and their suggested regular pricing. Now your early bird price is what you need in order to confirm the trip. So that's your minimum number. And your minimum number is basically your break even point. So that's when you start making money, the local operator starts making money, and Trova Trip starts making money. From there, you can then adjust that pricing how you see fit. And you can actually see the numbers going up and down and see the entire breakdown of like what Trova Trip's cut is, the processing fees, and then how much you'll make. So you can play around with those numbers and see like what makes sense for you and your business.
Awesome. I'm going to piggyback off of this, and this is kind of more of a like Trova question, so I'll go ahead and just jump in there. It says, is there financing or payment plan options for customers who cannot pay in full? The answer is yes, we offer payment plans through Affirm. So basically when somebody would go to book your trip, instead of putting the 25% down payment, they would apply to pay over time through Affirm, which is a separate party, but that is a really, really great option. I think they offer payment plans over 6, 12, and 18 months, if I'm remembering correctly, but it definitely is great. It makes it a lot more accessible for folks who don't want to put that much money up front.
And if you want to actually see a talk that Emma and I, who I said was hosting a trip to London, she went on my South Africa trip and she actually used Affirm on that. Her and I just did an Instagram live together. It's saved onto my page where she talks about that process and we talk about financing and your different payment options for trips. If you wanted to like hear that from the, like, we're both hosts now, but also if you want to hear that from like the traveler perspective and like why that made sense for her in that moment. And she gives some really great talking points about why she absolutely loves Affirm and why that worked for her when she was getting onto my South Africa trip.
Awesome. I did not know that existed. Now I know what I'm watching immediately after this webinar. Thank you.
No problem.
Cool. For informal gatherings, do you handle the logistics yourself? Like if we were going to a local restaurant, do I personally go and make the reservations, or does Trova Trip or the local guide do this for me?
For informal gatherings, it's going to be you who's handling that. And so you'll want to definitely work very closely with your account manager or your trip coordinator to make sure that you are timing that out right. For me, for Versailles, I actually had like a free day kind of built into my itinerary. And when we got the date for the ball, which originally we had thought was going to happen right after my trip and that people were going to extend and we were going to do it, it turns out the ball fell in the middle of my itinerary. So I immediately got with my account manager and we were able to move some things around. So that free day was the day after, because like I said, that goes all night. But yeah, I was able to work with them and coordinate to make sure that like we weren't going to be overlapping with anything that I was on our itinerary. So that we were able to make that work. But yeah, that's something that you'd be coordinating. That's something that I've been coordinating with by myself for the Versailles tickets. But like I said, that's a very complicated one. You don't need to go that complicated. Like it could just be like, we have a free evening. Like, let's all go get a drink at this bar together, or let's like just hang out and have a pajama party. Like it could be anything. It doesn't have to be something of like high monetary value or super complicated.
I like the pajama party idea. I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Next question is there a maximum group size that you'd recommend, aka a number that I should not go over?
So this I feel is going to be different for everyone. For me, I have discovered that 20 is like a really good sweet spot for me, both in terms of the number of people on my trip so that they feel like they've got enough people to mingle and mix with and meet, and also split off during some of those free times. My largest group that I've ever had was 25. And that was last year. And a lot of my trips were capped at like the 24 range. And I just decided 20 feels best for me. So for this year, I'm not doing any trips over 20. And that's something that you can also decide. I know some people who are doing 30 people trips, but that's something that you can decide when you're doing your planning process. And figure out what feels best for you and for the experience that you want to provide.
Do we need to stick to a pre-planned trip, or how flexible are the itineraries with Trova?
I'm kind of an exception to the rule, so I will let you handle that question.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, Trova's itineraries are professionally designed, collaboration of our trip design team and the local operators that are in destination. I think right now our itinerary library has over 150 options globally. And because we operate at scale, we're not able to offer a ton of like customization and personalization, but they are really intentionally designed and they have kind of some flexibility where there's going to be like optional activities, like maybe you want to go zip lining and that's offered in Costa Rica, for example, you can do that. Request out that workshop space if you want to lead like a yoga flow. So while things are kind of prepackaged, there is a little bit of flexibility, and we find that these itineraries are like tried and true and have really high success rates with our hosts and their groups. So. All right, question for Lindsay. Do you prioritize building a wait list once trips fill to account for the possible 90-day out cancellations?
Yes, absolutely. I never use the word sell out. I say that we are wait list only. And I also remind my travelers to sign up for the wait list. And I explain to them how the wait list works, because with Trova Trip, it's a little confusing because you do put in your credit card information, but you'll never be charged unless that spot opens up and your traveler says, yes, I want it. So it's not like the waitlist is automatic. Also, it is up to you to contact your waitlist. So I tell my travelers, like, I use the waitlist as a resource to let me know who's interested in the trip in case a spot opens up. And I tell them it's very likely that a spot will open up because people change plans all the time. I also constantly have travelers who are moving from one of my trips to another one of my trips, or like, you know, they'll change their mind. Like, spots open up all the time. So I tell them the wait list works, and the wait list is a resource that I use to get a hold of you to let you know that there's a spot open. Now, that being said, when a spot does open it up, it is available on the website for anyone to grab, even if they aren't on the wait list. So it's kind of up to you to monitor that, and also to like let your waitlist people know, like, there's a spot open, but it's also open to the public if anyone just like logs on and sees it. So if you want it, you got to grab it. But yeah, I totally use my wait list so that I can reach out to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And might as well continue to grow that community, like while you're at it, use that tool for
Oh,
sure.
and also if your wait list gets large enough, there is the opportunity there to perhaps do a second trip, which is what I did last year. All of my trips were doubles. So I did 4 destinations, 2 trips in each one. And each of my second trips, so like my part 2s, were exclusively sold to the wait list first. So they got first dibs on all of those spaces. So I think, and they would get, I organized it so that they would get first dibs for like 48 hours before it opened up to my general list. And like some of, I think at least my Christmas markets one, I feel like that one sold out from the wait list. So it's always great to cultivate your wait list.
Totally. Next question is there any kind of licensing needed in order to organize a group trip? Have you come across any issues in regards to travel regulations?
No, because Trova Trip handles all that for me.
Yay. Yeah. One of the benefits of doing it through a group travel company like Trova is we handle, all the licensing and stuff. For example, we have outdoor hosts that want to lead hiking trips in national parks. You have to have like certain certifications to be a guide. Our local guides have all that. So you just get to show up, hang out with your community, wander around pretty trails. It's pretty great. Lindsay, after launching your first trip, how long did it take for your signups to take place? I just launched it, but only 3 signups happened after promoting it daily for a week prior to launch. I don't want to keep promoting the trip and bombard my audience. What do you recommend? Should I wait for longer?
So for me, my first trip confirmed that day. And it took, I think, a couple months for it to sell out, if I'm remembering the timeline. But like I was saying earlier, is that people don't use social media the way we use social media as content creators. Like, I am constantly on my phone. And you know from all of the content that you put out that not everyone who follows you is seeing everything. So while you may feel like you're bombarding people, chances are they haven't seen it, or they're not seeing it as much as you think they're seeing it. I still have people who message me and they're like, oh, I didn't know you did group trips. And I was like, I do them all the time. So, you know, I wouldn't feel like you're bombarding people the more you're posting about it. And honestly, I've heard about this thing called the rule of 7, which now I hear is the rule of 12 because of how much media is in our faces, where like people need to see something, I guess, 7 to 12 times before they'll consider buying it. And so if you think about like those advertisements that follow you around the internet, and then you finally are like, okay, yeah, I'm going to buy that Halara dress or whatever. I'm going to buy like that viral bra, or, you know, whatever it is. You've probably seen it a bunch of times before you made up your mind to like finally go and buy it. So don't feel like you're bombarding your audience at all.
I noticed on the One Girl Wondering website that you have a select number of destinations. Is this based on trends or do these change annually?
Just on my group trips, or are you just talking about my blog post in general? Because when I write about on my blog post, it's places that I've been to and things that I'm interested in. But quite honestly, I'm not writing on my blog as much as I would like to, nor am I writing about all the places that I've been to. But as far as like when I'm picking my group trips, a lot of it goes right back into polling my audience and seeing what they're interested in and seeing like the destinations that they want to go to. And I will say that last year, for the most part, Well, actually, a big chunk of my trips I have sold off the back of my personal trips. So, like, I went to Costa Rica in 2021. I hosted my first Trova trip, which was to Costa Rica in 2022. I went to Iceland in 2021. I immediately wrote my account manager and said, I want to do an Iceland trip. And I did, that was my second Trova trip. So, a lot of times my audience is seeing places that I've traveled to and they go, I want to go there with you next. And I go, okay, great. Let's make a trip happen.
Awesome. Question pertaining to pre-trip documents. You mentioned that you create these for your travelers. So does Trova Trip help with guiding folks to know how to get passports and visas? Or are these things that they're expected to do on their own?
Well, I take an active role to help my travelers do that, but I do know that there is some documentation on Trova Trip's website, as well as you guys have a partner for visas. But that is something that your travelers are responsible for doing on their own. But I do recommend that if they have any questions, they reach out to me. And I can either answer them from personal experience, or I do a pretty good job of pointing them in the right direction, or like what to search for to answer those questions. But it is on them to make those arrangements.
Yeah. So, yeah, speaking to what Lindsay said, making sure that folks know that like they need to have their passport if they're traveling out of country, is something that will fall onto the traveler's plate. We do have something called the Sherpa visa. So that'll come up and basically people click a drop down and say, hey, does this destination require a visa to go to? And they can use that as a guide. Beyond that, there's certain things like during COVID, different countries had different rules regarding vaccinations. So we'd always recommend checking the state site because those update so frequently. We didn't want to keep that on the Trova website and risk something becoming outdated. Okay, question from Jay. How far in advance do you plan your trip?
So I think that the required limit for Trova is about 8 months, correct, to launch a trip?
Yeah, I believe it's, I want to say it's 6 for domestic itineraries and 8 for international.
But for me, like I'm already planning 2025 and have been, probably since late last year, I would say. And that's just because I have to plan out my stuff that far in advance. It's not necessarily that every trip is going to be launched a year in advance, but I want to start thinking about what destinations people want to go to. I want to start making those arrangements, and I want to start getting those dates on the calendar, especially with Trova Trip, because some destinations or limited itineraries like Christmas markets gets full really quickly because it's a very popular itinerary. And so I want to make sure that I'm also getting those dates because that's an itinerary I helped create. And I actually had a really hard time getting dates for that this year because it was so popular with so many hosts, which is very exciting to see a lot of people taking advantage of like the hard work that I did in conjunction with like the trip design team. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're kind of thinking pretty far in advance so you can secure the dates that you want. Oh, another example of like wanting to secure dates super in advance is if you want to do like Japan during cherry blossom season, stuff like that, because those are very popular times to travel.
Well, great advice. Also, kudos to you for making an itinerary that was in such high demand. And I'm sorry that it was so hard to get a spot on your own itinerary.
I know, I was like, gosh, guys.
You're like, I need dibs here. That needs to be written in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Alrighty, next question. And then after that, I do think we're going to wrap it up just to be cognizant of time. If folks do have any additional questions, feel free to email host@trovatrip.com and we can support with any of those one-to-one questions as well. So last question that we'll end out with is I began surveying my audience, but didn't see a ton of traction and got discouraged. I'd like to start surveying again. How do you recommend that I do that?
So beyond like the sort of surveying tips that I gave, which is like get your link out there, kind of explain like why you're doing this in the first place. Also explain that I think it takes like 3 minutes. It's a very, very quick, easy survey. So letting people know that they're not going to be sitting at their computer, like filling this out for 20 minutes, I think is huge. But I've also seen hosts who have done giveaways around their survey responses where they say, you fill this out, I'm going to do a giveaway for X, Y, and Z to just sort of incentivize people to go ahead and give that feedback. And so you can get that information. But I would say the more you put it out there, the more people are going to see it and the more people are likely to click on it and fill it out. I really do think it's just a numbers game and getting as many eyes on it as possible. So yeah, but good luck. It's going to be great once you do get those surveys in.
Great advice. Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess if we're wrapping it up, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad that you were able to take a little time out of your day and spend it with me talking about group travel. If you have another question that comes to mind or you want to connect online, this is all the places that you can find me on social. I am at One Girl Wandering. Instagram DMs are definitely the best way to get a hold of me. You can also send me an email or check out my website. And if you're just getting started on your hosting journey and you have any questions or you want to know how to get started with Trova Trip, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk to you or answer any questions that you have. Something to note though, I will actually be gone March 2nd through the 14th. I will not have access to internet because I will be in Antarctica. So if you send me messages during that time, I am not ignoring you, but it will take me a little bit to get back to you. Also, if you are attending WITS, the Women in Travel Summit in Salt Lake City, Utah, I invite you to come to my session, How to Take Your Online Community Offline and Around the World, on April 14th. And if you want more information about that upcoming conference, please let me know. It has been a lot of fun chatting with you today, and I'm really excited to see where you travel to with your community.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Lindsay. Your expertise and your experience is just so appreciated. Thank you everybody for joining today. Again, we'll have the recording of this webinar sent out within a week, so keep an eye on your inboxes. And as Lindsay said, we can't wait to see where you go next.